what is going to be your legacy?
Joining us today on Legacy, the Family Business Podcast, is Josie Morris. Josie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and what Walkall does.
So I'm Josie. Thank you for introducing me. And I am part of a second generation family business called Walkall. And we produce insulated packaging, but using sheep's wool. We are currently launching other products too, which we can talk about. But so essentially our packaging is used generally to ship food and pharmaceutical products. So anything that needs to be kept temperature sensitive. And my mum started the business, so I say second gen, and we've been going about 15 years now. So and I joined the company in 2014. Okay. So it's been quite a journey for the last 10 years. It's gone so quickly.
I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
You've achieved a lot as a business in that time as well. But go back to the beginning and your mum. How did it all start for your mum?
So my mum is, I think entrepreneur is thrown around so much nowadays, and it's been overused for people who I don't necessarily consider entrepreneurial, but I think she is a true, if you define an entrepreneur, that would be my mum. And in her 20s, when she was having her children, she also set up a packaging consultancy. And part of that consultancy was working with companies like BHS, Forever Friends, Cadbury's. I think she worked with some car companies at some point too. I remember seeing Mercedes-Benz around, so not cars, but the packaging for them. And she was working with them generally to improve their packaging or their solutions, marketing, those kind of things. And so she started off a business in the early days, probably when not many women would have a business. So that's pretty cool to her whole story is really fascinating. But yeah, so she was working with one of her clients, the National Trust, and they were trying to come up with a way for their farmers. They had a group of farmers. So back in early 2000s, after foot and mouth, a lot of their farmers that they had on their lands were really struggling with their kind of generating income for their farms because, I don't know how many people remember this, but their livelihoods were gone. The animals obviously, unfortunately, had to be killed because of this disease. So they were trying to generate a way for these farms to make more value for the farmers. And one of the ways they wanted to do it was for these farmers to send out their produce direct to the consumer. So rather than selling to a supermarket, they wanted their farmers to generate more income through whether it's jams or meat or dairy, nice cheeses. So as Angie was working with them, my mum, Angie was working with the National Trust, they asked her, could she invent something that they could use, the farmers, to send out their produce direct to the consumer? Now, back in the day, the only way to do that, say back in the day, we're talking 24 years ago, way back in the day, I got reminded that I left uni almost 20 years ago, so that scared me the day, maybe less. So going back then, the main way to do it was by using polystyrene boxes, which obviously from a sustainability standpoint, nowadays people understand it, but back then, throwaway culture was a thing. So, but they didn't want to do that because the National Trust are very much around sustainability. So they didn't want their name going out with meat in a box, in a polystyrene box. So basically said to Angie, can you come up with a way for us to send, our farmers to send out this produce, but not using polystyrene? So that was it. That was the remit. And from there she tested plenty of different materials. Wool was one of them. She came across wool as an option. She designed and developed the design that we have now, or something similar to, and then got it signed off by the National Trust, and then kind of the rest is history. We've kind of grown from there, really. So quite humble beginnings, and in a sector that e-commerce was then, as people started buying more online, that's where our kind of opportunity came to launch as a company, and now into the pharmaceutical as well. So that's exciting. But
massively entrepreneurial history. Your mum was a pioneer and a kind of a change maker in what she did.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're one of four.
I am, yes, one of four.
So she's a classic example of a woman running a business, a family business with 4 kids, juggling lots of hats, making it happen, and then developing this fantastic new product that's then grown over the last 20 years to where you are today. Yes. Still very much with sustainability, which was what you talked about at the National Trust. Yes. Sustainability at the very heart of what you do. So how has that journey been for you as a family and a family business growing to where you are today?
So I have to say, I don't know how she had a business. I mean, I have a dog. I don't have a kids yet. I don't know how she had a business and kids and 4 kids and 4 girls.
4 girls?
4 girls, yeah. Fantastic. So how she did that and survived, I think, she'll tell you, I'll say, but I look back and I think of my life now and I think I don't know how I would do that. But I guess you do, and we were really fortunate that she worked really hard and provided us with a really good childhood. And the things I used to remember, she would be working late at night, and she said I used to be in a little bouncer and she'd bounce me. So I wonder why I work better at night. And then I found out that she used to bounce me in this little bouncer at night when she was working. So I was like, that's of course rubbed off. But all of us, I think, have been instilled that belief that as a girl you can do anything. I think if you look at the industries that we're all in, one of my sisters in the business with me, another one of my sisters in construction, so she's a project manager in construction, so again a quite male dominated world, and my other sisters within the NHS, so all four of us have done quite different things, but I think that comes from that instilled belief that you can be a woman, and it's not necessarily about having it all, but you can have what you want. I think this concept that women can have it all is a bit pressurizing. I think it should be more around you can have what you want. So what do you want? If you want it all, that's fine. But if you also want X, Y, and Z, that's cool too. So go back to your question. I think that environment was really. I found it quite nurturing. Obviously, like with anything, there's stress. When you're growing up in an environment where there's a family business, there's always pressures. You're probably aware you're kind of dependent, aren't you, on those the success of the business, really. And I think it definitely instilled in me that that belief and that entrepreneurial spirit of, okay, well, let's just try something. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't break you. You go again. And then I think probably from a family perspective, the sister who's in business with me, she is finance director. So again, although in the same business, she's very much finance, I'm very much sales and marketing. So I think Mum, I think because of the world she was in, I think, as I say, she's instilled in us that female, the concept that females can do anything, but also I think from a young age you realise that business isn't as scary as a concept. So I think that's probably the main thing. And then I think as we kind of all grew up and went to do our separate things, I think that was when she decided to launch Woolcool, because obviously she had the packaging consultancy up until the 2000s, and then once we all left home, that's when she actually launched Woolcool as a company.
So you've got your two older sisters ended up, so you all left the nest.
Yep.
All went and did your own thing.
Yep.
Two ended up NHS and construction.
Yep.
And then the two youngest end up back at the business.
Yes.
How did that come about? At what point did you personally and your other sister decide that you wanted to get back involved in the family business and help Mum?
So, as you say, we all went off. I actually did classics at uni. So in terms of what I wanted to do, I actually went to uni not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I played a lot of sport. So my first job was actually in sportswear. And I worked in sportswear for 4 or 5 years doing kind of sales and marketing type of role. And it was around, it must have been 2013, 14. And I was starting to progress in the company I was in, but also thinking, is this the route I want to go? And at that point, Woolcool was getting to a point where it was expanding and they needed a salesperson. So Mum came to me and said, I know you're happy in your current role, but I also know that you potentially don't know what you want to do in the future. Do you fancy coming into the business? And my first thought was, I want to do this right. I don't just want to come in. But I also believed in what she was doing. So I asked her partner at the time, Keith, who they're also married, so that's a different story. We can tell a bit later as well. But I asked him to interview me because I wanted to feel like I was getting it on merit rather than anything else. And don't get me wrong, I think there is a perception around Nepo babies, which I think is incorrect. I think quite often there is reasons why it's good to just pass it down generations. But for me, I kind of wanted to come into the business for the right reasons. And I remember a friend of mine saying to me, are you coming in the business for your mum or for yourself? And I sat on that for about 2 weeks. So I said to my mum, I'll let me think about this. I'll come back to you. So I sat on that and I decided if I could answer that question honestly, that I would then proceed and go for the interview and hopefully get the job. And actually I thought about it. And actually the reason I came into the business was for a challenge. So that's how I ended up there. And then my sister, who's in the business, she had a cafe and it was coming to the end of the lease. And a cafe, I mean, of all the jobs you can do, running a cafe is so so difficult. She's such a great job. And then she decided actually she wanted to go and do her SEMA, because that's where her skill set is around finance, and I always say that she's the brains behind the business. So she wanted to do a SEMA, and that was a really good opportunity to do so. So she came in the business originally. Hers is probably more traditional in that she came to the business to kind of help out for a few days a week, and then ended up staying. I think she loved working with me, so I think that was the.
What do you? Which I think is so interesting. What do you think? Let's go on the benefits first. What are the benefits of keeping a family business in the family?
I think the main benefits would be around trust. I think it's around legacy and trust and that future view. I think it's continuity of a business's culture. And it depends what you're building. And I think it depends on each business is different. But for me, especially coming in when the business was quite young, I knew what Mum wanted to achieve and I knew the kind of business she wanted. So going back to the question around, the product and sustainability side of things, is Mum's always been very much around sustainability. She used to always rant about plastic and how she wanted to get rid of it and all of this, even before it became, she's probably in the camp of King Charles and, early days of that. So I think I knew the kind of company she wanted. And I also felt that she'd worked so hard over her life that I also wanted something to come of this great opportunity, not just for her, obviously for the family and myself and everyone as well, but I knew there was something there. So I think there's a thing around continuity for its people and the culture of the business, provided that everyone, obviously everyone within the business coming in with similar values. I think families have similar values. I kind of tend to think your values are linked to your parents. So I always think you manage how you were parented, which is, I don't know if that's a true concept, but I feel that managers tend to reflect how they're parented, unless they've done real work on it and they change that.
No, I agree with that because you can do it both ways, right? If you feel you were parented really well, you'll go, I'm going to copy exactly what's happened and I copy those values. Or if you sit there and go, oh, they did a terrible job, and you can develop your own values based on the way that it is. So I think it's right either way, whether it's good or bad. You still will learn from whatever you grew up in.
Yeah, and parenting, I mean, I haven't got kids yet, so anyone's going to shoot me down on this, like, feel free. But parenting is management, isn't it, really? Like, in a way, it's management, but of a really small person, and a complex person too. So, but yeah, going back to your question, I think the big thing is that continuity of view. I think also there was a big push or a big focus, I think, on businesses that are for growth and sale. And whilst that in an economy works to a certain extent, I think the model of businesses that have been around for a long time that have created steady jobs, consistent, kind of not necessarily rapid growth, but steady growth, a great product, aren't just chasing the bottom line, they're looking for something genuine. I think businesses, and it's mainly, if you look at family businesses, mainly family businesses that have that kind of ethos. I think that to me is a big value of family businesses, and that kind of passing down the generation. It doesn't mean that the generation always has to be in charge, but I think having someone who was linked to where it started keeps that kind of future view, because I think there is that thing of businesses being a bit throwaway. 5 years and out, 5 years and out. And don't get me wrong, like, I understand why people do that, but I think that's where the value of keeping it in the family comes in, even if it's not the person who's leading in the business who's the family member.
You briefly touched on it on your experience, and I think it's something that we've had a couple of times, and I think we'll be interested with our community. The perception of joining the family business and the perception of your friends and the people within the business that is a unearned right that you have been given it. And I'll tell you, the people I play cricket with, I just play cricket on Saturday, the abuse you still get for being, you know, a generation down the list, no matter what your story is, they don't know, they haven't listened to it. And same with friends, you know, all the crap that you have to deal with, none of that comes out. It's purely your next generation, and the perception is silver spoon in their mouth. How was your job interview with your mum or your dad, you know, and that comes. And I think that may put a lot of people off, but it didn't with you. What was it that drove you so much to say, do you know what, I'm going to help Mum, Angie, to do this?
I mean, I agree with you. I think there's lots of positive and negative connotations, I think, to joining a business. I think it's probably similar if you run a business and it's independent. Is you run a business, that means you can choose your own time. And then you add to that your mum and dad have started it. Therefore, oh, well, then they're running it and you're just chilling out at work. I think that sometimes is the perception. I've been quite lucky that my friends have all been quite respectful of the fact they see how hard we all work. And I think the difference, with Woolcall and probably where you've got generation of business that are maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th, 12th, you know, generations down the line, we were building. So I joined when we were probably 5 years old. So we were building, and I kind of see the family business as longer than 15 years old. I see it as, you know, going back to when my mum was in her 20s. So she'd hate me to say, but it was 50 years or 50 years on. So I think it depends on where that business is at and the perception you get. You know, if you're going to an already established family business, there's probably pressure and expectation, isn't there? And I think I guess where I come at it is that I think a lot of that pressure, a lot of the reasons I joined was probably a mixture of my own striving to prove myself. Like I remember saying to my old boss, let me fail. Like, let me have a chance, you know, let me prove to you that I won't fail, but give me a chance. And I think there's that thing of when you've got a business that you own or you're running or it's on you, I think it tests you. I think it pushes your boundaries. And you can either go one or two ways, can't you, as someone joining? You can go either it's going to make the best of this, or I'm going to ride this and I'm going to just, you know, take it for what it's worth. And I think most people joining family businesses are in this camp where they're saying, I'm going to do the best I can do and I'm going to prove myself. Because I think the thing that comes with a family business is you've got to be better. You've got to prove yourself, because what's gone before you is a measure, isn't it? So, and I think that's what drove me. And I think the other thing that drove me is, as I was saying before, I know how hard my mum has worked over her lifetime, and I wanted something to come out of that, because a lot of what she did was a service previously before we had a product. And I looked at how hard she worked and I kind of felt, I guess responsible is maybe a word. I wanted something for the work she'd put in, and I felt like Woolcall was a way to do that, and something that she'd then created that I could take the legacy forward of.
And you've done that, and you've done that incredibly well, because if you fast forward from when you started to where you are now, you've gained your MBE for the work that you do and the recognition for the work you've done within the sector, the manufacturing and packaging sector. The business has become B Corp accredited. You've put in lots of processes, you're developing new products, you're growing that business. So you've really put your stamp collectively on that business and stepped up as the managing director, which you are now, to really help Woolcall grow and start the next chapter of its journey. How much of that drive comes for you, do you think, from the growing up in a business or growing up in a family where the business, your mum's ethic, has given you that impetus? As you said, any girl can achieve what they want to if they put their mind to it. You've clearly put your mind to it. How have you done that? And what are your plans for the next 20 years in terms of taking that further forward?
So how have I?
It's a big question. I'm sorry.
No. I think it's a really, really good question. I think sometimes when you run a business, you don't necessarily look back. Especially, family businesses. It's probably any business, but you don't necessarily look back on your journey and go, God, like, how did I do that? What, where did that come from? I think, and this is going back to another benefit of family, is a massive part of our success has been Jess, who's my sister. I don't ever claim to be the sole driver of Woolcall. I think Jess is an incredible finance director and we share really similar values. So I think we work really closely together and we're neither vying for each other's role. I think that can happen sometimes where you've got two people who want the role. I think we have a really good working relationship. And so a lot of the success has come from the fact that we've had is harmony the right word? Harmony between us. And don't get me wrong, we have things that we don't always agree on, but what we tend to find is the things we disagree on, we're disagreeing about how we get there rather than where we want to get to. So generally, I've been very lucky with that. I've had a really supportive mum and Keith have been really supportive, and the wider family, my sisters and my dad and everyone around it has always been very supportive of us. So I think the success to me has come from the people around us and also our team. You know, I think the biggest thing is recruiting people who believe in what you're trying to do, and not always trying to be that race to the bottom. You know, that thing of we just trying to get the cheapest price in the work, you know, do business in the most basic way. We've tried to create value in their packaging, and no one wants to pay for packaging. You know, let's be honest, no one wants to pay for packaging. It costs money. But I think from what we're trying to do is create a culture and a business that adds value to that packaging proposition, and can do other good things within the community and the wider world. So whether it's sustainability or socially, they're the areas. And I think that's probably really driven our success because we've had that purpose, we've had that future view, and it isn't just. And I would say a very small percentage of that was me. It's all the other people that we've had involved over the time, whether it's people who've worked for us, have worked for us, or people who've been involved along the journey.
It's a bit like the bus analogy, which I use quite a lot, isn't it? In terms of the right people on the bus, for the right people in the right places on the bus, and then the right leader. And you're clearly a great leader in what you do. And great leaders never really take credit for what they've done. It's all about the team around them and the people around them, which I do understand. But you're still quite young, and to be running a business that's as successful and as award-winning, winning so many accolades as you do, must give you that extra kind of an impetus to strive to go further forward, because you're quite competitive in terms of you want to make a difference. Purpose is really important to you as a family. The packaging product started at a time that people were still using plastic, and you chose to go down a different road. So talk us through the next stages, because of the next stage of your obviously young career already, but the next stages in your career. What do you want Walkall to become?
So the question around kind of achievements, I think, this is going to sound a really odd thing to say, but this is very honest. I think it's been absolutely fantastic, some of the things that we've achieved. And obviously, I've achieved that I've been awarded myself. But I do sometimes, they can also be scary, because you think there's a thing in Greek mythology where if you believe your own hype, you end up failing. And I think there's that thing of you can't listen to what's going on around you. You have to just keep improving. And I think I've always had that you can't just go, I've done a really good job, or I'm this, I'm that, I've got this. Like, actually, as soon as you start believing that, and how you know better than anyone else, you probably made the right decision at the right time. You know, quite often business is about is luck. You know, right decision, right side, right time. And the secret is everyone's just winging it. But I think for me, I've tried to make our decisions not only the right decision at the right time, but also for the right reasons. I think that massively helps. And then I think future view, I want, again, it sounds quite a strange thing to say, but I want to earn some of those things that I've been kindly awarded. So I feel like I haven't earned them yet. So I feel like I want to create a business that allows me to look back and go, okay, I've earned them now. So as I get older, I look back on them and go, okay, well, I feel like I've earned that.
Yeah.
Why do you feel you haven't earned them? You've been given them.
Yeah.
So someone thinks you've earned them.
Yeah.
Why is it that you feel you haven't earned them?
Because I think it's an individual accolade. And I am, going back to what you're saying about team, I'm very much about the team and about the people who've helped us. You don't get anywhere without, the people around you. So I might be the one who has that by my name, but it isn't me who achieved that. I get what you're saying. Like, there's elements where I've done certain things, but there's other people who have helped me get to that point. So if I sat here and said it was all me, that would be a lie. So I think, I don't know if that answers your question, but that would be
because you have it again. It's really interesting. It's a theme that's appearing in all the podcasts, that there's this kind of imposter syndrome-esque where I don't deserve it, and it's going to continuously drive you. Like you've just said there, you've been given these awards, you feel you don't deserve them, and you're now going to spend the rest of your career earning them. So it's this kind of circle of life where you're never actually going to achieve what you personally want, and you're just going to keep driving and driving and driving for what. And I think it's so interesting because it seems to happen a lot in family businesses, and especially in not the first gen, not the people that have set it up first. It seems to come further down, and it ties back to what you were saying earlier, which is this, well, I really need to prove everyone. And I look at my career and it's 100%, I'm just trying to prove everyone wrong. Like my parents, my friends, whenever I join the business, that drive to go through. And I think it's really fascinating you've turned around. And the one thing I want to just segue back into is B Corp. Because we've done B Corp here. It's got to be driven by the owners. I know why I did it. Why did you and Jess decide that B Corp was what was best as an accreditation for you guys?
So I'm going to go back in time a little bit. When I was little, the main business people who were around were mean, would shout at their team, were arseholes, let's be honest. And I don't know if I can swear on this, you might have to bleep that out. But they were, to be a good business person, to be successful, you had to shout at people, you had to be mean, all those traditional, you had to tip stuff in the sea or whatever it was. So all those traditional perceptions of what a good business person or businessman at that time was. And even some of the women were adhering to those, what were all male traits. And so I used to think, oh, surely you don't have to be a knob to be successful, and whatever successful is. Surely you can grow something and you can grow a business and get it to a good size, or, not just about size, but you have a profitable or a thriving business in a way that's kind or fair or doing the right thing. And I guess in that way, that's what I'm testing at the moment. Can you, and we're not perfect. I think you're probably the same. As a B Corp, I think all B Corps say this, we're not perfect. And so I'm sure I can pick out so many things where we can be better, but it's that intention of what you're trying to do. So I think I go back in time and I remember thinking, I'd really like the opportunity to prove that you don't have to be a knob in order to be successful. And I remember having an argument with one of my friends about whether a newspaper with good stories, like happy news stories, would succeed. Because at that point I wanted to be a journalist. So could you have a newspaper that was successful that only told good stories?
Love that.
So I've always had that in my mind, that why does it have to be mean? Why does it have to be negative in order for something to be successful? So there are papers out there that are successful because they're negative. So why aren't there papers out there that are successful because they're positive? And so I think when I think about the business now, I think there is part of me speaking to my 12-year-old self, which is driven by my parents' values, that are we doing an experiment currently about whether you can have a good, successful, fair business that's doing the right socially and environmentally? Can we do that? I mean, that's just me. I'm not saying that's the thing that's drove me consciously, but with the question that you've just asked, probably subconsciously, there's an element of that. And then B Corp, reason we went for B Corp is because actually putting it succinctly, so I just answered that question in an essay question, but putting that succinctly is business as a force for good. Because as a business, you have an opportunity and a group of people that you can do right by the people. You can give them education, you can provide them opportunities to go to university, whatever that route is. You could do some good stuff with the community, the environment, charity. So it doesn't necessarily have to be stuff around the environment. It could be stuff around people. So sustainability isn't just about, whether you switch your lights off. It's about how you engage with people too. So, and every business can have different ways they can contribute. So we went for B Corp though, because we were already doing a lot of the things that B Corp talked about. And we wanted it to show that within our sector, we were someone who was doing something differently, because a lot of people claim to do those things. And B Corp was a way to certify that externally. So it's all right. We could sit here and say, we've all got the same kind of business and we're all doing this thing. But at least B Corp was a way for us to say, we're doing this in this way. And someone else saying, oh yeah, you are, here's the evidence. It's not perfect, but it's someone else saying you're doing it who's external.
You talk about it being a business as a force for good. Family businesses, by their very nature, long-term view, investing for the longer term, stewards for current generations and future generations. There's lots of similarities in terms of the value set, isn't there, with the businesses that have got B Corp and those aspiring to get B Corp, and actually the family business community. And the two kind of run in parallel in terms of your personal ambitions as individuals making a difference, as a family, collectively. And I talk about some of the family in terms of the broader, and you include that in terms of your staff and the broader pool of people. But also, as you say, the social, the environmental, the just doing business the right way and being kind to people, the planet, and having a purpose kind of really sums up your journey as a business and what you're as a family all about.
Yeah, I think it does. I think, and I say B Corp puts it a lot more succinctly, and it might not be B Corp forever. It might be that there's something else that comes along that represents it more. But at the moment, B Corp is something that whether the businesses we work with that are B Corps, whether it's businesses like you guys that we could, you've got a similar synergy to. So when you're having those conversations, whether it's customers or suppliers or it's just people who are on your journey, the type of business you're talking to. And I think, as I say, no business that's a B Corp is perfect. So I think you don't sit around going, and there was a conversation I was having in a chat where there was a question, if you're B Corp, should you only use B Corp companies? I think it's quite an interesting question, because my opinion on that is no, because there are some fantastic businesses, and family business is a great example of businesses that are doing that, just don't have a B Corp certification. So it's probably about purpose, but I think B Corp communicated our purpose in a way that was easier for people to understand, in a way, and then it kind of goes across sectors then, in a way.
I think you've just answered it there, which is that B Corp is a quantifiable way to share your purpose. And
yes.
That's what you've done. And I think that's the same for us. And everything that you have said is exactly what the driver was for us, is just it allowed us to tell everyone what we were doing. Just you said something a few times and sneaked in between it. And I find it really interesting, because when I first joined the family business, I had this issue. You have referenced your mum and as Angie. And I think family businesses, we'll mix this up altogether. I'll give you an example. For me, we had our biggest customer on site, and I was part of the meeting. We were sitting at home, and we had our biggest customers, Winterhalter, and there's the sales director and managing director there. And it was my first week at the business, and we just got straight into the conversation. What are you going to call your dad now? And we all went into it, and we came up with nicknames and everything. And my dad just said, "Yeah, Richard." And I was, I don't know. And it just progressed over time. And I'm not lying. So I've been at the family business for 13 years, and my father has not been involved for the last 4, been in and out. I've, in the last month, changed him from Richard to Dad on my phone. It's been that long, and that Richard, that I've changed it. But I'm sure that it would be really interesting to hear at what point is Mum Angie? Is she Mum in the business? Do you do it in and out of the office? What is the routine?
I think I would switch between Mum and Ange, because there are some businesses where the perception of a family business is they're small. And I don't know if you guys get this. Your family business, your small business. So you go in and think, you're just a little family business. You can't take our volumes. And you're like, well, we can. And so that's why I think when I'm talking about Wool Call as a business, I tend to always use Angie because of that, to stop people from perceiving, if I call my mum, it's just me and my mum. And we've had that before where you pitch, a family business. You're a family business, that means you're little.
Such a myth, isn't it? That's all family businesses are small business. It's so wrong. You only have to take, I know, Euro Garages, JCB, Walker Shortbread. The list is endless. They're all family businesses run by the same values that you have, and they are certainly not small.
Yeah, it is frustrating. When I first moved back, took over the business, and they'd be like, right, how I'd go see customers, but how is your level of service? They'll be like, oh, well, as a family business, I think you do really well. And it's like, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, as a family business, and just like, well, hold on a second. Can you explain a little bit more? It's like, well, we've got these issues. It's like, well, tell us, and we'll fix them, because we're a business. Whether it's a family business or anything, we're going to fix it. We want to give you a better level of service. I think it's really interesting that that's how you do it with Mum. That's cool.
And I wonder whether, and I think it's probably changed over the years, but I think there is something about when you also say you're being sustainable. I think there is the same kind of connotation, or B Corp. oh, that's nice. You know, it's a bit like, oh, it's nice you're doing so, you're playing with that. You know, and I think, and it's not everyone. I mean, we've got some great customers that actually love that we're family businesses. We work with a number of family businesses that are fantastic businesses. And actually, interestingly, with those businesses, they really value our family businesses. But I find it really difficult switching between, because there are certain businesses that if I said family business to, that would be a cross against us rather than a tick. So I don't know how I mean, there'll be other businesses I'm sure that will be able to give a better answer. I'm not sure how you change the perception of that, other than keep banging on about, you know, how great family businesses are and how many, I mean, how, you know, you'll know this more than me.
There's 5 million family firms in the UK, 14 million people, around 12 to 14 million people employed by them, massive impact in terms of GDP. And community impact in high streets around the whole of the UK. It's massive. I think the other thing people don't understand, you've both got B Corp, is the amount of effort and work and paperwork and justification and evidence that you have to be able to supply and deliver in order to get that accreditation. And it's phenomenal. So people, I think, sometimes bandy B Corp around as though it's just a badge, but it's so much more.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know about your experience, but we went through our first certification. It took us, we were quite lucky because it was just before the wave. But I think it took us probably 3 to 6 months to kind of get everything together. And then you submit, and then you go through a few months, don't you, of kind of certifying.
You know how that's not normal, right? 3 to 6 months. You're aware
So
of
we were
that.
just
Someone
before the
told
wave.
you. Someone told you that. No, it's not. The point of making is there's a really big family business that he may have mentioned already that have a side hustle down the road here. I was talking to them. It took them 4 to 6 years to get it done.
Oh, really?
And I think we go back to everything we've discussed. And it's something you actually said earlier on. We were doing everything already. And so when we sat down and we went through everything, we've got this amazing girl internally, Steph. I'll shout her out. She's incredible. But we went through everything, 3 to 6 months to collate everything. And our score came in and we were just under the 80 points.
Yeah.
I was like, that's amazing that we've got that. And then you just work within the business and the little changes that we needed to, for us as a business, prioritizing already people, community and sustainability. It was so simple. But when I told people, from start to accreditation on the door, it was 18 months in total, they're just like, what? And I'm talking to businesses pre-pandemic, and it's just because that's the amazing thing that family businesses can do if they've got the right value proposition, which ties in back to what you were just saying, really. When you sit there and go differentiating yourself and how you get businesses to engage with you as a family business, it's to tell them that those are the values. And if those businesses don't like what you stand for me, I'm gonna walk away from that. I don't want to do business with someone that's just said, well, drop 20p off a litre and you've got my business. Sorry, that's just undervaluing the rest of my customers, the rest and the people that work for me. And I think if we should all feel confident to be able to turn around and say, you don't agree with our values, then fine. We
were working with a large company. And we were on a call with them. They were growing quite quickly, and we were quite small. They were quite a big percentage of our turnover at that point. And we were on the call with and they were heavily driven by investors. And they were on the call. We were on the call with one of their area directors, and he said, "You need to match this price." Like, well, we like physically can't, like, other than moving to plastic or changing our supply chain, which we weren't willing to do, that values piece. We are not going to do that. And he said 2 things to us. The first one was, well, you need to align with our values of loss making because we're growing. Because that was all about grow as big as you can, then make profit. We're like, well, and I said to him, your investors are your profit. So we have to make profit. We don't have investors. So we have to make profit to grow. It's not about, anything other than being able to invest and all those things. And then he said, well, I don't want you driving a Porsche off the back of this company. And I wanted to say I'd choose a Lambo, but no, I didn't. What I did say to him was, we want to be sustainable for the future. If the same as what you're saying, dropping by a couple of pennies, we can't sustainably do that. And if we did, they'd come back round again. So going back to the values is we had to look at ourselves and say, are we happy to drop our values and change our supply chain to get that customer or keep that customer or change the material we're using? Or are we prepared to lose, which at that point was 50% of our business, and be confident that we were going to grow again? And I was like, well, if we don't have our values, what do we have? Because we're like everyone else. Because our values are something within the sector that keep us, I guess, they differentiate us from other companies. And there's loads of great, don't get me wrong, there's loads of great packaging companies in the sector doing some fantastic things. But I think, and there are some that are family businesses, so you probably know. So there's some really great ones. But I think the thing that separates us apart is some of those values. So that is an example of where those values didn't align. So we walked away and lost quite a substantial amount of that business. But we grew again and we came back, and I think we're stronger for it because people buy into us for that.
Yeah.
So
it's great because something Paul said to me the first time I met him was what he loved about family businesses was because a lot of family businesses are planning for the future. You know, they are thinking 20, 30, 40 years down the line, that they sit there and their decisions that they're making aren't just on the specific impact on that second. It is the future, which is exactly what you've just said. You guys in that specific time sat there and said profit versus the future of our sustainability value, and you chose the future. And I think for me it is one of those things that why I absolutely love family businesses, because that's how they think.
Do you think that, sorry, now I'm asking questions, do you think that your customers have responded well to your B Corp and those values? You find it strengthens your relationship with them?
I think the fact that we are now communicating more about what we do as a business is strengthening our relationship with our customers, is what I feel. I think from a business growth perspective, I see it purely because the strength of the relationship is getting there. And I believe that for all businesses, we are all selling relationships, buying relationships, selling stories. You know, it's that. And I feel, you know, with B Corp, we can sit there and turn around, like you said. We look after our people. We care about them. We invest in the community via charities and raising money and doing lots of silly things. And we care about the environment. And we have times where there people come around and they say, well, you know, drop your price to that. And I'm just like, no, like, it doesn't allow us to do the amazing things that make you want to deal with us in the first place. Otherwise, there are plenty of other amazing companies and family businesses in my industries that offer a completely different value proposition, but that is ours. That's why we're, you know, the first in our sector to have B Corp, because that's what we care about. And I think I hope that our customers, you know, will believe that too.
It's another chapter of your story, though, isn't it? It's reinforcing you've got 75 years of history and heritage, family ownership, being a family business, but you've now got a B Corp. You can tell your story. It gives you another reason to tell your story. And I think the one thing that family businesses need to do is constantly tell their story and share their points of difference, whether it's through B Corp or sustainability.
Or this podcast.
Being proud. Or just being proud of what they've achieved and what they continue to achieve, because it's easy to take it for granted and it's easy not to say. And actually there's that little bit of pride with family businesses don't always want to be maybe arrogant or seem to be blowing their own trumpet, but actually somebody needs to, and it's important. It's an important part of the narrative. And it helps change the mindsets in terms of the family business, all are small, underperforming, don't do this, don't do that, but actually make a massive difference and have done for generations. So I think it's really important to tell that story.
Yeah, and I think the interesting point that I always think when it's B Corp, you're saying about there's loads of fantastic businesses that aren't B Corps that have different value proposition. And I always think, and it's a really cheesy term, but that authenticity, like, it's like the same as being a person. If you try and be someone you're not, it's really hard to be someone you're not. Yeah. And I think as a business, you own the things you are. So if B Corp or any of the other certifications or ISO or even, you know, being the cheapest in the market, which is fine. That's a value proposition as well, you know, and that has a value and there's reasons for it. And, you know, I think whatever the driver is that you are, if you own that thing and that's what you are and you don't try to be something else, I think to me that also creates a better economy, but also a better setup, because I think there's loads of, as you say, the same with us, there's loads of companies that you can go to and get X, Y, and Z from, but it depends on where they sit. And I always think it's a bit like dating. You know when you meet someone whether they're going to be, you know, the right fit, don't you? And not everyone fits with each other for different reasons. But I think if you're yourself and you're authentic with that, I think we found really people have bought into that openness and that authenticity. And I think as I say, I always think business entities are always like people. And I think if you if you aren't an authentic person, life becomes a lot harder. And I think it's the same with business. So I agree with you completely about that, telling that story, but also, there are other options out there, but you own the thing that you are. And so I think some of the best businesses I've seen are the ones that are just, this is what we are, and don't try to be anything else.
You also said just now, and picking up on something Sam just said in terms of the question he asked you in terms of celebrating success. Family businesses are notorious for not focusing on the strategy and focusing on the business. They're always kind of looking to the future, day-to-day operations, running day-to-day. Have you ever stopped and taken stock and thought, this is fun, taking a moment to think of what I have done as Josie as MD to this business, just actually appreciated your role in that business? Because you seem to be always looking forward. You don't like awards. You love the awards for what they are, but they're part of the team thing. Have you ever taken stock of what Josie Morris has achieved?
Probably not consciously. So you like sit back and go, oh, look what happened here. Jess said to me, so when the email came through for the MBE, I really struggled with it. In a positive, not in a negative way. I think it was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I don't want anyone to think that I'm being ungrateful. And I read it was an email, and I read it, and I was like, firstly, is this real? Because I thought it was a joke. At first I looked at it, I was like, is this a joke? It's got to be a joke, surely. And then I read it again, and I was like, what the hell? So I actually emailed back, because they ask you if you want to accept it. So I emailed back and said, if this isn't a joke, yes, I do. I actually put that in the email, because I was like, if this is like someone punking me, and I'm there's an MTV 90s link there, isn't it? So but is this someone sending a joke to me to see how I react to it? So I went back saying yeah. So, and I kept it for a bit, because you're not supposed to tell anyone, but obviously, not that I get in trouble, but I told a couple of people. I told my mum and told my sister. And my sister said to me, I said, I don't know how I feel about it. She was like, life has very few champagne moments. Just kind of just feel it. Yeah. And I was like, that's always stuck with me, because I was like, oh yeah, actually, okay, that's nice. And I think I was really concerned about how other people would react about it. I think I was more concerned about that. It was quite surreal. So I think the worry is, if you stop and take stock, you forget about what's going on immediately, and it goes back to that Greek, as I said, I did classics at uni, so it goes back to that Greek tragedy of, you spend too much time looking at yourself, it ends up being it ends up being a Greek tragedy. So I think that's it. But yeah, I in answer to your question, no, I don't think I've taken that much time to look back on it. There have been moments, I guess, where you kind of stop to look, but I think at that point I always go, right, what's next? Which may or may not be a good thing, but I don't know.
But I think that's family business for you, right at the heart. It's what next, and never just taking that moment. So your journey's been amazing, your personal journey, but the journey that from the moment your mum created Wool Call, that day around the table, just jumping in and going, I'm going to do something different and make a difference. That whole purpose thing that's carried on for 20 years is incredible. It's an incredible journey, and she must be incredibly proud of the two of you now taking on that mantle and taking it forward.
I like to think she. I like this one. I like to think she is, and I think I'm very grateful for. I always say this too. I'm very grateful for the opportunity she gave us, because actually, I think going back to the question around family businesses and that kind of the pros and cons, let's call it. There is always a risk when you take on your child, because it can go the other way. Because actually, it says, you've got the pressure as the child, maybe, but also as the adult, the parent, who's put that child in that position, your decision could be a failure too. So I think you're then looking at your child going, right, I'm giving you this, I'm giving you, this is what I'm giving you. So, okay, you finish work early on a Friday at 2:00 and everyone thinks you're slacking off, but you're also working on a Saturday and a Sunday, because that's the nature of it. But your parent knows they're giving you that. So that, and I think that's the other side of it. So, but I am very grateful to Mum for what she has set up, and very inspired by that. And very fortunate that she's got, the company was to a position where, we could come in and out, and it was growing. And then, so she's set us up for the future, both as a parent, but also, and my dad as well, as a parent, but also as two women going into the world of packaging. And I'm really fortunate to have Jess with me equally by my side. I think, I always say I'm not sure where Walker would be without her too. So that's a family business, though, isn't it? Like you say, you've got, and that goes back to trust. You've got those people around you that you trust, and you've got a similar values, similar vision, and hopefully we go from strength to strength.
I love that with what you just said, because as a parent, your job is to get your child ready for the world, and then as a family business parent, that handover, all of a sudden, you're putting the whole world, the whole weight of the world on their shoulders. Yeah. And I think it's I've never thought about it that way. And you've just made me think about it, that at some point I'd love my children to get involved, but it's that responsibility that you're handing over, not necessarily the responsibility of going, are they going to do well or not do well? I've just, as well as I do, that your business becomes your life. It isn't, you are thinking about it all the time, when you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning, at the weekends, the conversations you have with everyone, how's business, and it's ingrained in everything you do. Before I joined the family business, I didn't have that responsibility. Very carefree, sports marketing and cricket team, loved my life, slept fine, woke up even better, no problem whatsoever. Where now, there are sleepless nights, there are early mornings just due to that. And that must be, from a parent's perspective in a family business, one of the hardest decisions you could ever do, is to bring your child into that.
I know what she finds hard is I try to talk about separation of work and home. So especially when I first started Walcall, I actually had a relationship breakdown. Not because of Walcall, but because it was the right thing. But anyway, so she knew I was upset, because obviously any relationship's hard, isn't it? So whether it's through choice or not, it's a hard decision. And she'd come into work, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine, please don't talk to me at work. Please don't talk to me about this. I don't want to talk about this at work. Please don't talk to me about this work. And she'd come in and she's like, I've got you some sandwiches. I'd be like, thanks so much, please, okay. And then she'd be like, are you okay? So I ended up saying to her, because I think she thought I was pulling away, as in that there was a relationship issue between me and my mum, because I wasn't talking to her about these things. And I had to say to her, it's not personal at work. I just don't want to talk about it at work, because one, if I'm going to get upset, I don't want to get upset. And number two, I don't want, if you weren't my mum, you wouldn't be asking me how I am. So that's where that cold separation comes in.
Do you know, would no one at the office have asked either? Would not someone who reports have said, heard this? Because family businesses are very open, and these things, any business stuff travels, right? You've got the water cooler moments, and just being like, oh, Josie's relationship. And I've had it here, my relationship broke down, and it just spreads like wildfire. Yeah. And people come up and ask. And
so I haven't been that open over the time. So more so now I'm more open. But I mean, there wasn't as many of us in the office at that point either. And I think I just started really at Walcall at that point. So it wasn't really common knowledge, I think, that whether I was in a relationship or not. And it's only become recently people will know if I'm in a relationship or not. Because I've always been just generally, I'm quite private anyway. But it is true that I think you become, I don't know if this is relevant for this podcast, but you become a bit more conscious of there is stories that will be told about you based on what's going on in your life and how you're reacting to things. Or so, like you say, if people know that you're, especially as a family business, people know that you're separating or know something's going on in your life, they know that, well, that's part of the family, isn't it? They're part. I mean, we talk about our team as part of the family. Well, part of the family is this is going on by this person who's part of the family. That's happening, that's breaking down. So you do a little bit become the gossip. Now, at that point, I wasn't, because it was probably very early on. It was very early on, so probably not really anyone knew. But certainly, I could see now. Not that that's going to happen, but I can certainly see now how that would, potentially.
That's what they've bought into, right? The staff, whatever you are selling to them as a business, a lot of it, a lot of the recruiters go, listen, can we just get Sam to speak to them, to tell them about what the business is before the HR recruitment kick in, because that's the place is, Walker is your business. It is you. It is your sister. It is your mum. And the same here. It is me, and we have such a big influence on it, and people do care. My brother's is engaged, and it's all over the company newsletter, and people wanted to know, they want to talk about it. The guys in the engineering lab just like, oh, well, we've got your dad's old car, we're going to get that ready to drive him. Can I drive him? Can I drive his bride? And all of this stuff, like they all really get involved, and it has that amazing spirit to it. And I think it's kind of, like you said, you to begin with, I very much pulled back, and now I get it. Now I understand it a little bit more. I probably should do it even more. Is generally how I feel, because that's the culture. That's what people want, and you've probably seen it all over the place. And I know you've been involved in more family stuff than in your history that you'd rather probably have avoided. But
I think everyone goes through life. You go through a journey on life, don't you? In terms of that. But I think what you both are talking about in terms of those. The people talk about family business, as you say, it's a family. So your staff are an employment, they're all part of a family. You know their stories. You know when they've had kids, or their kids have got married and divorced, or someone's starting, the family's died, or all these things happen. And so you flip it on its head. You've kind of welcomed them in as part of your family. That when things happen in your family, they kind of feel they not own part of it, but they're part of that too. So it goes both ways. It's really the fine line. I think, Josie, you're one of the few people that's talked about boundaries in a way that's really been succinct for me over all the years I've talked. People always talk about boundaries and trying to separate work and relationships. But the way you put your relationship with Angie, your mum, and your sister, and how you've done that, and I think you referred to it in your own way. I kind of talk about it as the Mr. Ben moment, but you're probably too young to remember Mr. Ben. And in terms of, you go into and you put your uniform on to go to work, and you leave your personal home at home, and then at the end of the day you take your uniform off and you go home to being home, and that's a bit extreme. That the two are so intrinsically linked, it's really hard to do. But you explained it in such a way that really resonates with me, and people find it really hard to do. Really hard.
It is difficult because you don't have a separate work and home brain, do you? You know, you have the same brain wherever you are. But I think, I think probably it's just that it's how you separate it, and whether it's healthy. I mean, that's the question, isn't it? Whether you should be taking more to work, you know. And as I say, for a long time, I didn't really talk about my relationship at work at all, just because I didn't feel comfortable to do so. And I probably talk about it more now, but I think that's probably just as you get older, you become more comfortable with those things as well. But I agree. I think I like to think how I separate now is healthy. I think at the time, you know, going back to the conversation about mum, like that conversation having with my mum about, yes, you know, because I think there was a point where I was pulling away from that with mum outside of work too. So I think going back to that journey you go on. So I was doing it so much at work that it was happening at home. And that's what I was saying about relationship changes a little bit, where I'm very close to my mum, and I tell her I'd tell her everything, but I was telling her nothing at that point. So I think that's where you learn, isn't it? As those things, you go one way and then the other, and then you find somewhere hopeful in the middle. So it's been a work in progress, but I think I'm hoping now we've got to a point where that's a lot more balanced. But certainly it's never perfect, is it? But I'd say that I think I'm now at a healthy point of that separation.
I love that. That's brilliant what you just shared, because I think that is not what people know about with a family business. It's you're in work, and all we've talked about here, what was the impact at work? And it's like, well, mum, respect my work boundaries, but because we're putting up boundaries in the workplace, actually, when we go back home, it's doing the same. And it's exactly the same when I joined the family business, and my dad and I were clashing the whole time, and I was like, well, I'm going to put up a boundary for him, and then outside completely, and it took years for us to break that down again, because I'd put it up here. I'd say 8-9 years it took to get it down.
But that's the honesty of business. That's the honesty reality. And people can talk about nepotism and silver spoon and being given a golden ticket to go. And there's lots of downsides, potential downsides when you do that, because you're putting your relationships, the people you love closest and dearest, on the line. And it can cause relationship issues with them at work and also at home, and or both. And so your honesty again, and the way that you've described it, I think will resonate with an awful lot of other family business people and people that work in family businesses, because they're probably all going through similar sorts of journeys themselves and haven't taken time to stop and think and actually appreciate the dynamics, how they're changing. So
I think the thing I find hardest, and whether I will be able to do this in a composed manner, I find the hardest thing, and this is about personal thing, is that I know Mum's in a point in her life where if she was my age now, she'd want to do what I was doing. And she's never said this to me. And I know I've aired this to her previously and said, I feel guilty that I'm doing the thing that I know she wants to be doing. But she's had years doing the job she was doing, but she really believes in wool call. She's created something, and I think whether she'd want to be doing some of the day-to-day stuff, let's be honest, like some of that stuff, you know, being on your emails at 2 a.m. in the morning isn't necessarily what you want to be doing, is it? But like, I do sometimes catch myself feeling almost bad that I've got the opportunity to do it, and I know she doesn't. I mean, as I said, I've had an open conversation with her about it, but that's something that, going back to that, those other emotions, those other dynamics that you have, where you know that ultimately, you know, Mum hasn't retired yet, and I don't think she ever will, but she, you know, she'll say herself she doesn't necessarily have the energy to do what she was doing when she was in her 30s. And like, I feel, you know, there are times where I feel, you know, you feel kind of bad about that, but no one's making me feel bad other than myself, my own thoughts. So I think that's that.
But she's incredibly proud of you and what you and Jess are doing, and taking her mantle and taking it. It's like she's passed the baton. Really happy. I've spoken to your mum on numerous occasions, and she's a phenomenal force for good. She's an incredible person in terms of what she's done, but she's incredibly proud of the two of you and what you're doing. So I understand what you're saying, and I kind of have empathy for it in terms of what you're saying. But actually, if your mum was in the room now, she'd probably tell you to don't be daft and actually just embrace it, because she's given you that opportunity, and she's really proud of what she's created, and you're building on it, but building on it through merit and ability and your own desire to then build on what she's done. You've got a part of your mum's, I guess, DNA, obviously got her DNA in you, but her entrepreneurial spirit, her drive, everything that she had when she started this out, and it was a dream for her to do what she did. She must be delighted that 2 of her 4 kids are now following and building on that dream. So I think you're right to think about it, but I think you also need to give yourself a pat on the back and say, actually, I'm doing a bloody good job, and I'm just building on the foundations that her and Keith in the last few years have created and built on, and you're doing a phenomenal job.
What advice would you give yourself on your first day working at the family business?
Wow, okay, that's a big question. What advice would I give myself?
Thank
okay.
you. Great
well
question.
done. Great question.
Oh, sorry, big question. Not
big
great
question. I didn't say it was a great. I didn't say good. I didn't say great. I said big. I guess, can I give you 2 answers? Can I give you 2? Okay.
Yeah, and we'll choose the better one.
Okay, great. The first answer would be that going back to what I was saying about understanding the other person's motivation. Absolutely, no matter what you're doing, whether it's working with a supplier or a customer, whether it's working with your parents or sister, is try not to react quickly to something. So I think one of the big things that we've tried to do is be empathetic, so understand what motivations, and that's the same with the team, anything like that. So if something happens, you understand what's going on behind it before you then do anything about it. And I think then that covers, you know, whether you're getting stressed out about something or you're falling out with someone, it helps to improve those things. And I think the other thing is probably this is going to sound really quite hippie, but this comes from my mum a little bit, is just that belief in kind of what you can achieve for the future. So things will go wrong. And I was saying to someone a bit ago that life is a bit like Snakes and Ladders. So
great game.
It's a good game. It's a good game.
So when you're on a ladder, maybe, but not
when you're at the bottom. So as long as you're going up more ladders than you are go down the snakes, you're fine, aren't you? But the point being that there's always ups and downs, and it's what you do to bounce back from them. So I think probably, I guess that would be actually the best answer to that question would be, don't worry if you're on a bit of a downer, because there's always an up again, so it does always get better. Like, and especially in business, you as long as you keep moving with the time, I think you'll continue to move forward. So I don't know if any of those things are relevant for your question, but
yeah, they resonate with the other people we've spoken to in terms of empathy and trust and long term and being considered. I guess I've got one more question for you in terms of what makes Walkall special for you. What gets you out of bed in the morning to go into Walkall and do what you do? What makes it special?
See, that's a great question.
Thanks.
Cut that.
I like to think that it's quite unique in how we do things, and I think it's really I guess it's cliche. I think it's the people. I think the thing about people isn't they can do your head in, but also they can be the best thing about something. And I think that's that resonated, didn't it?
Do you see what I have to put up with? Unbelievable.
It is about people. Family business is all about people.
Yeah. So I think people, and I think there's the side that's working with my sister. I think that's massive. That's massive. I really enjoy that, and I'm very lucky that we've got to a point where we work really well together. But I think also it's that achievement. I think it's that thing that is something that we are building. I think there's something special about independently building something, and being a little bit of an underdog where people don't expect. We're creating something out of wool. So most people think it's a cottage industry, and that we, we're using something fluffy, but we don't realise it's got so much science behind it. It's got so much research behind it. It's got so much potential behind it that I think sometimes we're seen a little bit underdog, which is quite satisfying when people realise that actually we do have a great product. So there's a few areas really, but that they're people, product, and family, I guess.
Yeah, and that competitive sporting edge is still there, isn't it?
Very much so. Yes. Yeah.
Just leads nicely on to the last question from me. The legacy, the Family Business Podcast. What is your legacy going to be?
I'm hoping.
Let me rephrase that. What do you hope your legacy is going to be?
I really hope that the legacy of myself or the business is that we did things fairly and we did things in the right way, and the business was successful. And whether success is measured by money, or I don't necessarily believe it's just measured by money. I think it's measured by reach and all those other things. That it's successful as a business, and that you don't have to. We've done it in a different way that isn't just shouting at someone or that traditional. We've done it in a way that can be considerate of our people, of the environment, but also of still building a good solid business and product. So I'd love it to be used as a example of actually here's how you can do good business. And probably like yourselves, as a family business, I think passing it down the generations, you hope that then continues, and that has a wider impact as you go along. If you're however many 75 years on, that's always been how you've kind of thought. The amount of people you will have reached and the impact you'll have will be massive.
Josie, that's amazing. Thank you, Josie. You've been listening to Josie Morris on Legacy, the Family Business Podcast, with me, Paul Andrews, and my co-host, Sam Greaves. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Join us on the next episode when we're talking to another great family business owner about their story, their insights, and their thoughts for the future.
What is going to be your legacy?